Welcome once again to another edition of Becca's Talking here. Every Tuesday at 10 a.m. we've come up with a new podcast, but you can listen anytime you want on any of your favorite streaming services, YouTube, Spotify, or on iHeart, all of them. So tell your friends, spread the word, and it's brought to you by the fine folks at Havana Garage and the Old Market. You know, Havana Garage and the Old Market, they've been around for a while. It's a great place to just go and especially if you're doing something downtown. You know, if you got a concert you're going to at the CHI Center or the Holland, or maybe a play at the Orpheum, or just a nice dinner in the Old Market, make Havana Garage part of your plans. Of course, also, if you're just looking for a place to hang out with your buddies and maybe have a cigar, have a drink, that's a great place, too. Tell them Becca sent you when you stop on by. Heard about it on the Becca's Talking podcast. Havana Garage in the Old Market. I'm really looking forward to this podcast. This is a woman that I've known for, I guess, close to 35 years now. This is Colleen Quinn, and if you talk about entertainment, she is a foundation of entertainment in this city. She has been managing the Funny Bone for 35 years. We were talking about this before. 35 years.
Long time.
It doesn't seem that long ago.
No.
Yeah, but okay. So I know you had some new exciting things going on at the Funny Bone, and I want to talk about that a little bit later on. But first, I'm curious about how you got here. I mean, how did you end up managing a comedy club? Were you in the entertainment field before, the bar business? How did you end up in Omaha managing the Funny Bone?
Tom, you've known me a long time. You don't know?
I've never asked that question.
Know. Okay.
Yeah.
I moved here from Chicago. I went through a divorce and moved here. I had 2 young sons. My mother lived here, and I knew I'd need help with those little rascals. I was a bereavement counseling coordinator, so I was primarily dealing with death and dying. I came here, and back in the early days that a lot of young kids wouldn't know, you found a job by looking at the want ads in the Omaha World Herald. And I answered an ad for a receptionist at a comedy club, thinking I'd do the opposite of death and dying. And I went in there and did that for a while, and the manager quit, and I ended up running the place.
Wow. Okay, so just right place, right time.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
What's interesting about that, as you're talking about how you were a bereavement counselor, the comedy club that I started at in Albuquerque, Laughs, was run by a guy by the name of Gary Bynum. Gary, yes, prior to owning a comedy club, was a psychologist. So there's a lot of that sort of counseling that goes into, I think, when you're dealing with comedians.
Absolutely. And I knew early on, because there's no training manual to be a comedy club manager, but when people would complain about their pretzels or their seats, or I couldn't get upset. I'd go, "You're not waiting for a transplant. This is a joke. Just sit there and enjoy it and zip it."
Yeah, okay. So now you're managing a comedy club. Now, this is like, you've been there 35 years.
Yes.
So the original place was on 114th, just a little bit north of Dodge.
Yes.
In the shopping center.
18 years.
18 years you were there. That's where I first started working the Funny Bone back then. You grew and you moved over to Village Point.
For 20 years.
I've been that long.
20 years.
I have no concept of time anymore.
I know.
And then now you're going to be moving back to 114th, just north of Dodge, with a whole new location and a whole new concept.
On the west side of 114th, yes.
Yeah, and I'll get to that in a little bit later, but that sort of brings me into the question about, in the time that you've been doing comedy, how have things changed? Because it's not, I remember back when I was doing comedy in the late 80s on the road, I noticed that a lot of the one-nighters in the comedy clubs, many of them were now becoming karaoke bars, and they were changing in that. Funny Bone being an exception there, and the Funny Bone chain being an exception. But a lot of them were doing that sort of a thing. So how has comedy changed in the 35 years that you've been there?
Well, social media has been a huge impact, just huge. With that being said, people are aware of these one-nighters, or a comic will come out of the blue and you'll go, "Who are they? They haven't been around. They don't have any chops, do they?" It's become more structured. I think it's far more structured, where back in those days when you were there in the early 90s, it was Wild Wild West. Mm-hmm. The comics were, I don't want to say more fun, but they were a little bit more out of control. Now I think everybody,
it's a business now.
It is.
Whereas
business.
Before it was like, let's just go and throw some stuff against the wall and see what happens.
It's far more structured.
And back then you were allowed to bomb more because people went to a show knowing that you were trying new things and experimenting a little bit. That's not allowed as much these days, is it?
No, it isn't. It isn't. By the time you hit the stage, you've got to have somewhat of a following and somewhat of an act. It might not be the act that I think is funny, but they will have a really good pocket of people that will come out to see them, all flavors. And that's what I like. What really makes me happy is standing in the back of a full showroom and seeing all different ages, people from all different demographics, religious, political, all laughing at the same joke. It just, I think, brings people together.
The great thing about comedy in general is that it is such an involuntary action.
Right.
You know, I mean, yeah, it's either there or it's not. It's also such a fragile thing. As from a comedian standpoint, a joke that kills on a Tuesday might bomb on a Friday.
Right.
Or vice versa, you know, and you don't know.
No guarantee.
and sometimes it's the audience. Sometimes it's a matter of just, I need to pause a half second longer, or, you know, instead of saying cow, say chicken, you know, or whatever it might be, the word might be, to try to, you know, bring in the bigger laugh. I love the art form.
Yes.
You know, and when I go to a club now, I go to a show, I like hanging out in the back and just watching and observing the audience and observing the comic and studying it, because it is such a, I think it's such a wonderful art form, and it doesn't get the credit I think that it deserves.
Well, and because we've been around and I've met so many fun comics coming up, I think they feel safe in this room in Omaha, Nebraska, coming in and working out a new hour. So I've had some really big names that will come and work that out rather than go to New York or Dallas or L.A. So they'll work it out in good old Omaha and then hit the road.
Well, you know, you mentioned that, and you just had Nate Bargatze there.
Yes.
Who is like the top. I mean, that's the top of the top. Now. And he was working on a new act a couple weeks ago at the Funny Bone. And I didn't know this. He used to be a feature act at the Funny Bone.
20 years ago. He was a fun little feature that came through.
And that's one of the reasons why he comes back to Omaha, because he feels comfortable around you and he knows Omaha, and he has fond memories of the place.
What a great guy, and I'm so happy for his success.
Talking with some of your employees that week when he was there, and they said that, you know, he's still down to earth, great guy.
Yes.
Great guy. I've found over the years that the more talent a comedian has, the nicer they tend to be. Do you think the same is true, or is it maybe your experience is different?
I know. I also have some talented ones that won't give you the time of day.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. That can happen too. And maybe they're jaded because they've been approached, they've been hit too many times, so they're a little wary. But for the most part, you know, the big guys with talent are pretty down to earth.
Yeah. You've also worked with managing other acts. You managed Billy McGuigan, right? Did you ever manage Larry the Cable Guy, or just...
No, we've just been friends since 1990.
Yeah.
And I've watched, I mean, before he was Cable Guy...
He was Dan Whitney.
He was working the room. And I'm talk about another down-to-earth, really successful comic who couldn't be nicer, more generous. They don't come more so than he.
When you're looking at somebody like a Nate Bargatze or a Dan Whitney, a.k.a. Larry the Cable Guy, do you know, someday this person's going to make it big? Or is it the thing like they're just another feature act, the other guys, you know, working the road, or can you tell at an early stage that this person's really going to make something of
I
themselves?
am always surprised.
Yeah.
You know, I'm somebody who, when Dan Whitney was flipping over, I went, I don't know if you should do this Cable Guy thing. I don't know. I think you should maybe just stick to you. You know, and I think a lot of it is because I'm so focused on who is there that week. And they're funny, they're delivering. I can't really tell who's going to break out. You know, I had Bert Kreischer. We had to comp Bert Kreischer. And I went, Bert's funny, he's silly. I don't know. Maybe he drinks too much. Maybe he's not going to make it. I think he made it.
Was he taking off his shirt backward at
the
club too?
Yes. Yes.
One of the, during the roast of Tom Brady, Nikki Glaser had the funniest line about Kreischer. Said, you know, hey, I really love your joke. You know, because that's it. I mean, it takes off his, but you're right, he kills and people love him.
That was Nikki killed it. She's top of her game.
Had she ever worked the club?
She did as a feature, as a feature for Pauly Shore back in the day.
So you've seen all the
quite a few
that have come and gone. Nikki Glazer was working as a feature. Pauly Shore was the big name. Now Pauly Shore would be opening for her.
Oh, if he's lucky.
Yeah.
If he's lucky.
Yeah, but he's still out there.
Pauly's still.
Yeah.
I'll have Pauly back.
Yeah. What do you do when you bring in a comic at any level, headliner, feature, opener, and they just stink? They just suck. They're not good. You've got to go and put on a show for the audience. You got to make sure that the audience is happy. How do you deal with something like that?
Tactfully, just have a little chat with the one or two and say, perhaps Omaha isn't getting your jokes. So let's cut your time. Let's rearrange. Let's, we'll cut time off of you and give this one more. And maybe I'll even have to bring in one of my locals to help plump up the show.
Going back to the early days when, Funny Bone first opened, and I don't know if you were doing it here, although I'll bet you probably were. Like a Tuesday or Wednesday night would be an open mic night, and every week. And the comics would come and they'd hang out, they'd work out material. That's how I started in Albuquerque.
Right.
Tuesday nights, the one from our group that made it somewhat is Mark Marin was in our group.
I think Mark did okay.
Mark's done okay for himself. Of course, when he was working Laughs in Albuquerque, when I knew him, he was into the drugs and alcohol and a real a-hole. But he's turned his life around.
Yes,
and
he has
done very well for himself. But on Tuesdays, guys like me that had never gone up. Matter of fact, that's how I got up there, because I went on a Tuesday night to watch open mic night, and I saw some people that were really bad. And I said, I can be that bad,
right?
and then the manager said, hey, you're not so bad. Come back, and that's how I started getting involved in it, and it becomes addictive. What is a comic today, though? Because you're not doing those open mic nights on a Tuesday or Wednesday now on a regular basis.
Every 6 weeks,
yeah,
we'll have a clash of the comics. And what is different from when you hit the stage is that they already have to have been on a stage, one of the dive bars or the backline or Duffy's. They have to have been on stage before they hit our stage. It can't be their first time up.
So you've already screened them before they come up for the open mic night.
Of sorts, yes. Yeah. Yes. And then Daisy Curtis runs that. I let Daisy and Vinnie Raven, they get to do that because I'm a little over the open micers. After X number of years. After they make it through there, then they will send them to me to do a host spot or a guest, and I'll look at them and go, yeah, I can see you've got it. Keep it up, or don't quit your day job. I can be brutal, I'm sorry to say, but I'm just.
Well, you have to be, and just because you don't like them doesn't, like you said, doesn't mean that somebody else.
And I've had comics that I've told way back when that you don't have the chops. That really got to them. They wrote, they went out, they came back, did it again, and went, okay, it's been a couple of years. Yes, now you're better. Now you might be able to do something.
I like going to, and you mentioned some of these, like the Backline and some of these other smaller places. A lot of bars now, just regular bars, like on a Monday or Tuesday, are doing an open mic night. And occasionally I'll go out to one of them just to watch, because it's poetry. Because you've got 10 people in the room. You got 8 comics, the bartender, and the one comic that has a girlfriend. That's basically
right.
And they're up there, and some people have got an act, and they're working on an act, and other people, it's like therapy. As they get up there and they just have no jokes or anything. They just get up there and talk about, their bad childhood or whatever.
It takes a lot to get up there and expose yourself in front of people, whether it's 10 or 300. It's kudos to them.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that the Funny Bone has got some new things going on.
We do.
Okay, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I got to do one more quick ad here for the fine folks at Almost gave the wrong name of the place. Havana Garage in the Old Market. Yes, Chaz and the group there. It's got a nice little motif there, kind of a Rat Pack kind of a thing with pictures of Sammy and Dean and the chairman of the board. It's a great place to have a nice cocktail, relax. Whether you have a cigar or not doesn't really matter. It's just a nice place to go. Whenever you're in the Old Market, downtown, make Havana Garage part of your evening. So you're moving now to 100, basically just across the street from where you started off 35
Correct,
years ago.
Yes, but much bigger, a little over 16,000 square feet. So that's a big bay.
Now, is that the showroom, or because you're doing a showroom and also having a game room, right?
It's called the Draftcade, and the Draftcade will have 70 retro games, 48 beers on tap, and a full kitchen restaurant. And it will open at 11 a.m. outdoor patio, fun stuff like that. And it's adjacent, so it's all under the same umbrella.
So the showroom will be next door to the arcade.
Right, it's connected inside.
So,
and the same kitchen can handle Draftcade and Funny Bone.
Is that a trend? I mean, we talked earlier about how, the one-nighters are becoming karaoke bars, the comedy clubs are becoming karaoke bars. Is this a trend now with comedy clubs where they're opening up to a wider variety so it becomes comedy club / sports bar?
Well, the Funny Bone that I'm involved with, we have 16 Funny Bones across the nation. And all the new ones that are being built or that are remodeling include a Draftcade. So I'll be like the 5th or 6th doing the Draftcade concept. And it's working well everywhere. You can bring the kids in for lunch during the day. 7 o'clock at night, it becomes 21 and older. And maybe people after the show want to stop on the patio, stop at the Draftcade, play some games.
Yeah, because right now, basically, it's only got a Friday or Saturday night, 2-show night.
It's over.
It's over.
Done.
Get out. We got to bring in the next people.
Right.
This way, it's over. Hey, go have a beer next door.
And guaranteed, the comics are going to hang out after the show and play video games or Pac-Man or something. They are quite juvenile. Most of them.
You'll have to have Daisy go over. Hey, headliner, you're on. Come on.
Right. Absolutely, that will happen.
Yeah.
No doubt.
But the showroom itself is going to be bigger than what you have now at Village Point.
Yes, we'll seat 375 at the new location, and the current one is 300.
Is that also a trend? In other words, you would think with everything on, the reels and TikTok and all of that, and people getting their entertainment now, they're not going out necessarily as much as they used to. But you're expanding the showroom. Is that also a trend? I mean, is the comedy club scene bigger than I think it might be?
With the names that we're getting, yes, it is. And what I'm hoping, Tom, is that a lot of the guys that come to town and do the small theaters may want to come and do 2 shows one night in my room, which might be the same as a theater with perhaps less expense.
Yeah. And also, a lot of times when somebody's in town at the theater, they'll also come out to
They'll pop out and say
they're
hi.
playing Thursday in town. They got the night off. They'll stop in or whatever and visit. You also you're part of as I recall, part of a showbiz legend in that you were there when Seinfeld got the call about his sitcom, right?
That is true. In January of 1990, I just started working there. Seinfeld was hot off a Showtime Comic of the Year, and he got the phone call that they were picking up the sitcom. So he took a bunch of the staff out for sushi, and that's kind of the last time Jerry was nice to me.
Really?
I don't hang with Jerry.
Well, I know you don't hang with him, but I mean, have you, like, when he's been in town, have you connected with him at all?
No,
or
not at all.
No, he's
Not at
he's
all.
on a whole other level now, and yeah.
He's up there.
Yeah,
He's up there.
but others though.
That was
but
pretty
others
cool.
do. I mean, I know, like Louis Black. I know you've got a good relationship with Louis Black, and he's playing the theaters.
Lou's been a great friend for many years.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe I'll get Lou to come back in and do a little skit.
Well, is he?
This is his last year.
So that's what he says. Yeah.
This is his last year. He's going to teach and write screenplays after this, and he deserves it. He's been on the road a long time.
I opened for him in Kansas City at Stanford and Sons. They're in Westport, and it had nothing to do with Lewis or me for that matter. But somebody just driving by and they shot at the window. Nobody got hurt, but shot at the window while we were there. They're just sitting there at the bar, having a drink after the show.
Westport was always interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Especially with the Glazer brothers.
That's another. May they rest in peace. But boy, the stories of those guys,
True.
Well, that's actually something else though, because again, having worked the circuit for a comedy club manager, you're pretty normal.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I don't mean that as a compliment,
That's
obviously,
true.
but because, like I said, the Glazer brothers were.
And quite a few other.
A lot of cocaine in that room, yes. And there were, other people that I worked. I worked a club at Lake of the Ozarks. I could swear, I couldn't prove it in a court of law. I could swear this guy was part of the witness protection program.
Freddie DeMarco.
No, it wasn't Freddie DeMarco. It was some other guy. It was another. It was DeMarco was in Columbia, Missouri.
Yes,
but this was another club down there in Lake of the Ozarks, and this guy.
And he probably was,
yeah.
Tom. It's a good possibility.
Yeah, some New York guy, just a nice guy, but just, didn't ask a lot of questions. Now, Freddie DeMarco,
That's
though,
very kind that you say I'm normal.
Well, yeah, no. Well, but I know from talking to other comics around the country and that over the years, friends that I know. I mean, you've got a great reputation in the comedy club industry. Like you said, the people that you bring in, Louis C.K. or whoever that you bring in, you've got a great reputation.
I thoroughly enjoy the Misfit Clowns, and I have ever since I got involved. And I think we just treat them with respect and know that we'll get that much more out of them. And it's been like having naughty little brothers or uncles come in every other week. And it's fun to see the success and the changes in their act.
Yeah, there've been a few that, like Chris Porter, who I know you bring in, has done very well for himself. But he was an open micer in Kansas City when I was down there.
Right.
And, and I always love seeing him when he comes to town because it's just like, I remember when you were,
Right.
You had 4 minutes of material and now you're,
He couldn't even MC back then.
No. But now
he's top of his game. Really funny.
Where do you see comedy going now? Because can it be political? Can it be cutting edge, or has it got to be somewhat more generic? I guess maybe that's not the right word, but just more approachable for the general audience.
I still think that stand-up comedy is the last bastion of free speech. So all of those can be correct. And with this day and age, you can get a snippet as to who you would see. And so you wouldn't be surprised if you came in and they were political. And you wouldn't be surprised if you came in and you will know what their opinion is, or if they're just fun, regular comics that want to appeal to everybody. So I think there's room for all of that. I just would prefer to stay away from some that are really toxic and rile the crowd up with some kind of weird hate.
Yeah.
So I still am able to veto somebody that I have researched and went, nah, I don't think I want him.
Yeah, okay, so do you do the actual booking, or does that, like the headliners, or does that come from, you mentioned Funny Bone, is that all these other?
Dave Stroop in Columbus, Ohio, at that Funny Bone, books all 16 of our clubs. But I'm somebody who's been around long enough that he books somebody, I get to yay, nay, just because I tend to know a lot of them. And a lot of the comics will come back and do a week here that they won't do other clubs, just because I think they feel comfortable. And Omaha's a good market. The crowds here have always, I'd like to think we've trained them to appreciate comedy.
The crowds at the Funny Bone have always been polite. I mean, and I don't mean that in a just bland way. I mean, you don't get a lot of hecklers. You don't get a lot of drunk people that are trying to disrupt.
Because we don't put up with it.
I know you don't. Yeah, you run it.
We just don't put up with it, and it's always interesting to cut somebody off and say, no, you're not going to drink anymore. And who are you to tell me that? Well, guess what? My name is on the liquor license, so I get to decide you don't get to party in my room.
Yeah. And people, I think, for the most part, know that.
I'd like everybody to have a good time and be safe.
Yeah.
And if people get a babysitter, they spend money on tickets, they're coming out, they don't need to have somebody disrupting them next, they're gone. They're gone. My door guys are really good about that. They can take care of a lot of it before I have to get involved.
I don't think at any time that I've been there that I've seen anything get way out of hand. You'll maybe get somebody that's a little bit rowdy, but nothing that I've ever seen get way out of hand. And I have seen other clubs where things have gotten way out of hand.
Right.
But not there. So the new location is going to open up when?
The draft cage should open by May 14th, and I hope to do my first soft opening of comedy the first week in June.
You have any big names coming to kick off the new place?
I haven't decided who I'm going to tap into. I have to know for sure when that date is. And, of course, with Omaha, you might want to time it to right after College World Series before you bring in somebody big and pizzazz.
How does that, College World Series, does that hurt you then, generally speaking?
Most of the city either attends it or works it, so you tend to pick wisely who you might have during those weeks.
What about other events in town? Does Berkshire Hathaway have any effect, or any other?
Well, the Berkeys don't come out. I always save a table for Warren, but he's busy taking pictures, signing autographs. But we can still. Omaha, as you know, just hit 1 million.
Yeah.
And we're a big enough metro area that we can override. We can still have a show and pack the room, even though something as major as Berkshire Hathaway, because those people are going.
It's a whole different crowd, and that's not.
Yes, they're not coming to laugh.
So basically, College World Series is the one that really just might have an effect.
Correct.
What about the seasons? Is winter better than summer? Summer not spring? Does it matter?
It depends on the booking, on who the talent is. Last summer we had a record summer. But yes, winter, everybody here is hardy. And so if there is not as much to do outside, they'll come in and laugh. So we do really well in November, December, January, February, the cold months. And I always tell these L.A. comics that come out that complain, you're packing the room because you don't have to compete against barbecues and lakes.
Yeah. Do you still enjoy it?
I do. I do. I do. I'm only qualified to be a greeter at Walmart, so I will keep this little gig for a couple more years.
Yeah.
But I do still enjoy it. I enjoy my staff. Right now we'll triple the staff, so I'm looking for those fun people who want a part-time job and can handle a few nasty jokes. So just go to the website and fill out an app.
And a shout out to Daisy, your assistant manager.
Yes.
She's been there a long time too, hasn't she?
Yeah, Daisy's 18, 19 years. And so is Brian Bendhams, the chef and bar manager, both of and they're coming to the new club and new barcade. So they are young and eager. They're going to do more, and I'm going to do less.
Rank has its privileges.
Yes.
And I want to do this too. I want to give a shout out here. We'll do a plug here for this water. It's called Liquid Death. Liquid Death, and you brought me a can of this water. Why, Colleen, did you bring me a can of Liquid Death available in a store near you?
We sell a lot of it at the club, and we have for at least the last 5 years. The whole premise of Liquid Death is murder your thirst, death to plastic. And I really like the fact they give 10% back to cleaning the plastic out of the ocean. My son, Dan Murphy, is one of the main guys who started with it, with Mike Cesario. And he does all of the marketing and comes up with zany ideas. And
they're doing quite well.
I think they are.
We were talking before we did the podcast. Your son had a really good job. With
Google. Yes.
With Google, right? Good job. And he says, Mom, I'm quitting the good job. I'm going to go and I'm going to get involved with Liquid Death.
And I said, you are an idiot. People are dying. It's a pandemic. You are going to throw away a career and get into water. And he said, you just watch, Ma. And that's one kid that proved me wrong.
And lo and behold, they wound up with ads in the Super Bowl.
And a lot of comics have it on their podcasts. My son, growing up in a comedy club, both of my sons were 7 and 9 when they started out, and had Ron White help them with homework, which I should have thought better about that. Uncle Tater.
You mean to tell me you had Ron White with your kids and Child Protective Services didn't come and arrest you?
I dodged it. I dodged that bullet. But yes, indeed. They helped them with the homework. So both of my sons grew up, and the one thing I always say is you will not grow up to be like Pauly Shore, being in the comedy club, doing your homework, etc. But Dan really took on getting involved with a lot of comics and getting them involved with Liquid Death. And more people, just don't want to drink alcohol or beer if they go to a concert or a club. And Liquid Death kind of fills that niche.
Yeah, and it is good
And they have
water.
different flavors and different sodas that. So we keep it at the club. We sell a lot of it, and I personally really like it. So.
Well,
He proved me wrong.
Well, what you said, talk to your son about that with Liquid Death. I was reminiscent of when I told my mom I was quitting my job to go on the road to do jokes for a bunch of drunks in Oklahoma for $100 a week. Yeah. Yeah, it was not.
Proud moment.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, it was, she didn't talk to me for 2 years. I mean,
Wow.
I would call and say, hey, Mom, how you doing? I'm in Cleveland. That's nice, son. Here's your father. Because she was just so worried about me being out there on the road. But if I hadn't done that, I never would have been able to do the talk radio and everything else that I've been able to do with my career since then. I wrote a book years ago called There's No Business Without the Show. Because when you do something like stand-up comedy, it's much like being a salesperson or whatever. You can learn so much from that to help you with your everyday life, really.
Right.
Because it takes. You tell jokes to a bunch of folks in Eufaula, Alabama, good old boys in Eufaula, Alabama. Nothing will ever scare you again. It really is a great learning experience, whether you make it or not.
I believe you. I believe you. I'm sure you've had some hell gigs.
Well, yeah, but any comic that has come through your place is more likely to talk about the hell gigs than they would ever talk about the times they killed.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, those are the fun ones. Those are the fun ones. But anyway.
But no, I do still enjoy it.
Okay, so the new place opens up in end of May
Yes.
for the
Draftcade.
Draftcade and you're gonna have, like you say, the classic games, but like
They're
Pac-Man
all
and stuff.
old, yes, old pinball machines.
Oh, old, like regular pinball machines.
Yes,
Oh.
all. And what's so great about all these pinball machines is that this guy has revamped them so that you're not dropping coins or quarters or tokens.
Mm-hmm.
It's all done with a wristband, and you get a wristband and you just tap and go from game to game to game. Just stay there and
play
and regress. Regress.
Well, I look forward to that, and I also look forward to the new club, which. But of course, you don't still be around for how long?
We're down to 4 weeks.
4 weeks now. Okay, well, actually, by the time this runs, probably be down to about a week or so. But then
That's
you'll be
right.
shut down for a while as you open up the new place. But look forward to it all, and I want to thank you for the times that you booked me and the times we're able to do some stand up there. The last time I ever did stand up, and the last time I ever will do stand up, was my niece and nephew had become adults, and they said, Uncle Tom, we never got to see you do stand-up. And so Daisy arranged for me to be on Clash of the Comics, and it was a packed house.
And they got to see you.
Packed house, and I did. Thank God I did very well that night, And it's like, yeah. And it was a great experience. I want to thank you for that. Just thank you for bringing in some incredible talent over the years there at the Funny Bone, and I look forward to the new location.
You'll be invited. You better be. We'll have a seat for you, Tom.
I will definitely. I'll be in make it in the back though with the other
I know.
comics. That's where I want to.
I do.
I want to be in the back with the other comics watching. And you can always tell when the comic on stage is bombing because the comics in the back are laughing their ass off.
They are dying. They love it, don't they? They love it.
Yeah, they do. Thank you very much. Hey, every
Thanks, Tom.
Tuesday, a new. This has been fun. I enjoy this one. This
Thanks,
was good.
Tom.
Thank you.
Me too.
Every Tuesday, a new podcast. Tell your friends, spread the word. We've also got a Facebook page, the Becca's Talking Facebook page. Like that, be a part of that, and join us every week with a different podcast. Interesting people, local people with stories to tell, right here on Becca's Talking. Till next time, take care and bye, y'all.